Good evening, everyone, and welcome to BT's Fly Tying Friday. Tonight, the 12th of December, Joel Evans, Colorado fly tyer, is going to be tying some stoneflies. And our weekly tip is what we're going to talk about covering up. More on that later. But for now, we're the BTs from Boise, Idaho. And what we'd like to do is bring our dear friend Joel Evans in here on the side by side so we can introduce him to you. Joel Evans has spent more than 40 years in Montrose, Colorado, blending work as a fishing guide, writer, photographer, and fly tying instructor. He is a longtime outdoor columnist for the Montrose Daily Press and the fly tying columnist for the High Country Angler, with additional articles and photos published in various outlets. He has taught fly tying to hundreds of adults and children. A charter member of the Gunnison Gorge Anglers, chapter of Trout Unlimited, Joel has served in nearly every chapter role and now sits on the state board of the Colorado Trout Unlimited. He also is on the regional board for Fly Fishers International, Eastern Rocky Mountain Council, and the Fly Tying Group. He has led major improvement efforts in the Umpqua River, including quality catch and release water below Ridgeway Dam and new in-town access within stream structures. He is currently involved in river design planning for a new business park. His reel is engraved. Thanks, Dad. And that's to honor the father who introduced him to fly fishing. We need to listen close now, guys. This is a big thing. Joel is also among the few people who have traversed the Black Canyon of the Gunnison on foot at river level, and he's done it twice. Now you may say, so what? Don't yawn. It's kind of like climbing Mount Everest, only it's a hell of a lot more dangerous. Anyway, Joel, we'll turn it over to you and let you take it from there. Thanks, Joel, for being with us.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to have the evening tonight. Appreciate the opportunity to sit and tie with everyone. Honored to be on your program, Al. So thanks for that. So before we get to some patterns, I just might mention a couple of things. One in the introduction there, Al mentioned, I live in Colorado, and I just say, I'm not a world traveler. I haven't been to some place to catch Dorado or Taiman or something like that, but I've been playing around in the Rocky Mountains and mostly Colorado for 45, 50 years, and tying most of that time, self-taught tyer out of books, that didn't have any photos or just drawings, because that was all pre-internet and videos and so forth. So it's been a long journey, but it's been fun. And so I'm going to talk about tonight some stoneflies. Stoneflies are not everywhere, most places, not so much as mayfly and caddis, but where you do find them, they're a pretty meaty treat for trout, so they're pretty fun. I wanted to mention, if you're not familiar, just give a shout out to FFI. This won't show up on the camera real well, but this book, there we go, Fly Tying for All Fish, All Waters. This is a hardback book. Eric Austin's on the call tonight. Barry Webster, Larry Olson put this book together from our FFI fly tying group rendezvous a year ago, a little over a year ago, in Dallas, and collected all the flies and made a fly pipe plate and put together a book for that. So that's a book you ought to have. So look that up when you get a chance, and be a good purchase for you. So take that. Another thing I want to mention up front is the stoneflies that we tie. There's lots of different varieties, different colors. It's pretty much like any other patterns that we do. It's pretty easy to change colors, materials, and come up with something different. So tonight I'm just going to kind of show you a couple of my little things. I'll switch here to the materials screen. Okay, so the two patterns I'm going to tie tonight are salmon flies. So, throughout uh, cold trout waters, not just in Colorado and the Rocky Mountain West, but anywhere there's cold rivers, east to west, there's stoneflies. But one of the largest and most significant is I call it an orange stonefly because it has orange color in it. It's more commonly referred to as a salmon fly, and it hatches just for a few weeks in only a limited number of rivers. So I'm going to show you some photos here. I can share and go to there. Now, if you can see that photo, this is the Gunnison River. So I live in Montrose, Western Colorado. Denver's on the eastern side of the Continental Divide. Montrose is a town about 20,000 on the western side of Colorado. I got to know Al when he was in the area working for Whiting Farms, and that's been a great teaching and excursion for me. But of course, a lot of snow-fed rivers out of the mountains, but the Gunnison River is a little different. It starts up in the mountains with the snowpack, but it eventually downstream flows through the Black Canyon of the Gunnison, which is a national park. And the trails into there are all by foot. There's one section you can float in its lower area, but mostly you hike in there. And those trails are anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 plus feet deep. And so it's kind of straight up and down to get in and out of there. And it's something in my younger years, maybe not so much now, I've done a lot of. So that just photo gives you a little flavor of what that looks like on the Gunnison where the stoneflies hatch. Check that out. So we see in eddies and post hatch a lot of shucks, and you see mayflies, caddis, trichos, whatever. But during the stonefly hatch on the Gunnison, this is what you can get. They just are there by the thousands. And when these are all empty shucks that the nymphs have hatched, left, the dry fly has gone away. Just a pod of mass of shucks. Pretty interesting. This is what an adult looks like. So they're anywhere counting the wing, a couple inches long. Typically, the females are larger, and you'll see the stonefly, typical stonefly wings, two pairs laid back over their body with the 6 legs. And then here's a pretty cool photo of one on the underside. So from a tying perspective, that's kind of what the trout see, the different wings, the coloration of the body, the legs, the segmentation. So a lot of patterns out there for stoneflies, but it's a pretty amazing time when the big fish that might not typically come to the top for a dry fly, they're out feeding. I've been out there times where you'll catch a fish and they've eaten so many stoneflies, it's more than they can digest. Their bellies will be distended, and there'll be still flies popping out of their mouth, live flies that they can't even swallow because they've eaten so many. So there, just give you a few ideas there. Okay, so looking to talk about those stoneflies just as a sharing educational aspect. If you're not familiar, maybe many of you are. Many of you've fished the stonefly hatch. And then when I say the stonefly, I'm talking about the salmon flies. In western Colorado, this is typically early to mid-June. And so they exist throughout the Rocky Mountain West from Montana down to New Mexico. But they're not just in every river. And of course, we know that stoneflies are a great indicator of stream health. They need rolling, clean, cold water to be prolific. And so when you find stoneflies, particularly the salmon flies, that's a good indication of a quality river. And by quality, I'm talking about water quality, water quantity that the insects can thrive. So that's true of the Gunnison. The lower Gunnison, it runs through first through uh, three dams, starts up by the town of Gunnison, Freestone, hits three impoundment reservoirs, comes out very cold, very clear, runs through the Black Canyon for about 13 or so miles. That's the section I showed you the picture, the national parks section. That section is not uh, boatable. You don't go in there with any rafts. Expert kayakers can maneuver through there, but it's by foot trails only generally. And then you get out of the Black Canyon National Park and hit a section called the Gunnison Gorge. So if you talk to somebody that said they have floated the Gunnison, they're talking about the Gunnison Gorge. And that's another section of river. The main difference, the park, national park is steeper and deeper and managed by the National Park Service. The Gunnison Gorge is managed by the Bureau of Land Management, and commercial float trips are available on that section. But a couple of weeks in June, stoneflies, they don't come up through the water column like mayflies and caddis. They crawl to the river's edge, shut their husk on rocks and vegetation and dry out a little bit and do their thing, fly and mate and go back to the water. But they crawl to the edge. They don't come up through the water column. So that's a big factor in how we fish stoneflies. So tonight I'm going to tie two. I'm going to tie a nymph, and then I'm going to tie a dry specifically for the salmon flies. So starting with materials here, I call this pattern a double deep stone. Double deep is a reference to a pattern I made up for this hatch that has two beads in it. I'm going to use brass beads. You could use tungsten beads if you need even more weight, but this one works pretty well without the tungsten. I'm going to use a long hook. So I have here a number 6 hook and a 4X shank. And then brass beads. These are 5/32 brass beads. I'm using an orange thread. Yep, thank you, Al. There's the recipe. An orange thread. That's a 6/0 thread. And then the body's going to be some chenille. And that's a little different than the recipe you see. So part of that's because I made some changes, but also, frankly, recently I ran out of the brown yard. So I had to come up with something else. So it's a little substitution in my own pattern here. And then for wing cases, this is, can't quite see, I know the glare is not great there. This is Swiss straw in brown. And then for ribbing, this is not rubber legs, this is flex floss in an orange. And there's a reason for that. And then I've got different dubbings here that I'll choose for the thorax. So there's a recipe there, all the different ingredients that go into it. So that's on the recording. You can go back and pick up all those, and he probably got a lot of those materials, although orange as a theme may not be the most common material in a tires cabinet, but the stoneflies have some orange to them, both as a nymph and as a dry. So very, we talk about like nymphs today and paragons and tungsten jighead nymphs with hot spots. And so that's kind of before hot spots became popular, an orange salmon fly has hot spots on its head. Back to those pictures I showed you. It's just kind of a natural theme that shows up in the water, I believe. Okay, well, let's see. That's the materials. There you go. So back in high school, I had a speech drama teacher that said when you write a speech, uh, tell them 3 times. Tell them what you're going to tell them, tell it to them, and then tell them what you told them. So I think that's kind of applies in fly tying. I think where a lot of instructional fly tying, even some of the best quality uh, popular videos today fall short in that if you've never seen that pattern, to start with just a hook and thread, you don't really get an idea of where you're going until the very end. It's like, oh, okay. And then videos are easy. You watch the video again or something. So in all of my tying demonstrations, I've always got a finished fly. And so back to the speech guys, tell them what you're going to tell them. This is the finished pattern of the net they're going to do. Just to give you an idea of where we're headed along the way and why the steps wind up this way. Okay. So take that one out. So I'll start with a hook here. Just using that number 10, excuse me, number 6, 4X long shank hook. Yeah, that shows up pretty good. Okay. Now the beads, I just mentioned there's different charts out there. I just kind of put this up, not that you can see it, but there's charts out there that designate for different size hooks, what size beads you can use. That's a pretty good way to know where you're going with the different hooks. With all of my jig hooks, I've got this basically a pill box. I've got multiple sizes of hooks and beads and colors and so forth in a very compact uh, compartment that I carry with me on all my tying demos, and that works very well. So for this, then I'm going to put on 2 beads, and normally I wouldn't do this in the vise, but mostly so you can see. The first bead's going to go on normal. It's going to be a little hard to see, but you can see that side of the brass bead. This is not a slotted bead. This is a regular brass bead. That's the large hole side. And then on the other end, we have the small side. So normally a brass beaded beadhead fly, putting the small hole through the hook point first. And then that would come up and around to the eye and sit against the eye with the small hole against the eye and the big hole going backwards. Okay, that part's normal. I'm going to add a second bead here. But I'm going to do this one the opposite way, and there's a reason for that. I'm going to turn that bead around, and I'm actually going to put the large hole first. And the small hole to the back. Put that set in there. I'm using a Dynaking Pro vise. So those 2 beads then, that's why I call it a double deep stone. It's got 2 brass beads to it. And I'm going to move the second one back out of the way. And again, this is a nymph in the particular river I'm talking about, the Gunnison. The depends on the flows because it's dam regulated. The flows, well, historically before the dams, it flowed. They have records of 20 to 30,000 CFS peaks. Post dams, which is the 60s, 70s, a normal snowpack water year, which we haven't had for a while, pretty much everywhere in the West, we're talking about some measure of drought. But in a good snowpack year, a peak would be 5 to 8,000. In recent years, 2 or 3,000 CFS would be a peak, and summer flows can get down wadeable. It has to be under 1,000, 800. So June, when the stoneflies are out, sometimes it's wadeable and sometimes not. But fishing technique wise, that isn't a big deal because again, the stoneflies, no matter what the flow is, they're crawling to the edge. So the flow is up, they're crawling to the edge. If the flow is down, they're crawling to the edge. So they're crawling and hatching to the edges. So you do a lot of fishing, particularly the dries and the edges. But before the hatch, you got to get down deep. So I like the weight. I'm going to add, this is a lead substitute. Depending on the length of the shank or your hook, you can get different number of wraps on there. I put on about 6 wraps there just to keep the balance between the front section of the thorax and the rear section of the abdomen. So got that lead stuck in there, push it against the bead, get this back one rolled around, second bead pushed up in there. So that gives me about a 1/3 thorax, 2/3 abdomen measurements. Now for the thread, these beads, the lead, it'll move. To keep that from moving, I'll actually start the thread behind the second bead. Put a little twist in the thread there, come around. That'll lock that down some, but it still can move. So I'm going to jump the thread over that bead. Now, normally in a bead head fly, you wouldn't do that. Not that it, is awful to the fish to have a thread wrap over a bead, but for tires, it just doesn't quite look right. But we're going to put a bunch of stuff on this hook, and that's not going to show anyway. So I'll jump that thread to the front, wrap up that lead a little bit, and now I'm jumping the thread back behind the bead again. So I've got that tied down. Let's see, maybe I need to work on my focus here a little bit. Oh, there, is that a little better?
Looking good, Joel.
Okay. Okay, so got that tied down. That's a start. I'm just going to make some open wraps. I'm just looking for speed and get to the back here. And what I like to do, and this is just kind of a signature thing of mine, we talk about how no real insect has a big metal hook sticking out its back end, right? So I like to take that thread past the bend of the hook, cover it up with some color. I think that at least gets rid of the shine and the look and maybe add something. So almost all my nymphs, I put a tag on that, if you will. That's simply thread down the bend of the hook. Okay, I got that little tag on there. Now I'm going to build up a ball. We're going to put some legs on this, and the legs need to spread. So standard technique, you could use a dubbing ball or just thread. I'm 6/0 thread here, so it'll take a few wraps, but comes pretty quick there. So I've got a little ball of thread on the end. Okay, now back to my materials. I've got it all set up with Al's handy dandy clips. It's all ready here. So I'm going to tie in my flex floss here. Get it captured. There we go. So again, this is called flex floss. So it's not rubber legs, it's flat. And I can kind of show you on the camera here. It's a little stretchy. So you can pull on it some, but not too much. And we'll use that in a minute here. Now to make a tail out of this, I could have tied on two separate pieces, put them against the ball, multiple different ways to do that. What I've learned with this pattern is to double that over. Now, the way this material works, you can kind of see stoneflies don't have long tails. They're pretty short tails relative to their size. But this particular material, if I were to try to make a tail about that long, this material doesn't behave very well. So if you were to have a little fun and actually tie this pattern, what I've learned is to take that material and make a much bigger loop. And that's a bigger loop than we're going to need for actually tying the tails lengthwise, but it will behave a little better, allow me to capture that. Now, all I want is a couple of wraps there for that to hang there and stay there, because this is going to be our ribbing. And so it's in the way on the right side with my right hand. To get it back out of the way like any standard ribbing, I'm going to pull it back. Tighten it up against that ball. And then hold that out of the way, off out of the camera. I've got a material clip there, so I just took that floss and stuck it in the material clip to get it out of the way for the moment. Okay, so I've got that. I want to pull it tight against that ball so it'll spread later. Now I can start in on the body. And again, the material I've got ready here, this is chenille. I've used yarn, I've used chenille, I've used dubbing. The point I'd make about using chenille is the distance. So here we're talking about going from the bend of the hook all the way up to the rear bead. That's a lot of distance to cover with dubbing. You know, it takes a lot of pulls out and rolling up the dubbing to make that distance. So the main advantage of chenille is just speed and ease of use. You can cover that ground and make a really nice abdomen without a lot of time spent with dubbing. And it's kind of funny, you know, chenille is a long time beginner type of material. What's one of the first flies we teach any beginner is woolly booger, and using chenille is just so easy to work with. But here we all are on a Zoom call in 2025, and here's chenille. I think it's kind of fun. So I'm going to wrap that forward. Now, a normal chenille body, how thick or thin you might want it, there's just touching wraps, and you'll get a certain amount of thickness to that. Here's what I do with this instead, though, to get it a little thicker. So if you notice those photos, those stoneflies, their bodies are pretty fat. So I want this to get a little thicker. And again, if I was using dubbing, I'd just have to put on a whole lot more dubbing. But I do this, I call it a 2-1-2-1 technique. So not this first wrap here, I'm just getting it started. So here's first of two wraps, 1, 2. But instead of continuing forward, I'm going to do one wrap back. So as I angle that chenille to the rear, between those two wraps is something of a little gap. And if you'll angle it back and overwrap it, you get just a little more thickness. So that's the one of the 2-1. Now do another 2-1. 2 forward, 1 back. 2 forward, 1 back. 2 forward, 1 back. And then just however many you can get up to that second bead. And I'm going to, I just need, there's a couple is all I need to get that chenille to sit there. I don't need a bunch of wraps. Trim that off. And what you get there then is a fairly uniform size abdomen, which is how stoneflies are. We tie and talk about tapered abdomens with particularly mayflies, but stoneflies not so much. They're pretty uniform. So I got that captured there. Now this is where that stretchy material of this floss comes in. I'm giving it a little bit of a pull, but not real hard. And it's flat. And what I want, if you remember in those photos, the segmentation that we're imitating is very prominent. So unlike maybe, say, hackle, I could move this around, trying to work it down inside the chenille, and it kind of disappear. I don't want that. So I'm going to give it just enough tug to wrap around, but not pull down inside the chenille and be buried. I want it sitting there. I want it showing up. So I've got just a little bit of stretch to it. So now with that one piece of floss, I've created the tail, I've created the ribbing, and I'm going to use this piece right here as the backside, the first of a leg. So I've captured that and I've wrapped slightly rearward in order to make that floss point slightly rearward. Now I've got excess material here, and I'll trim the legs to exact length at the end. So I'm just coming in here and saying, okay, I just need some something to tie with on this second one. So I have trimmed that off. I'm going to use that waist as the leg on the front side. And that just captures it there. I don't have much thread in that, so it's not real secure, but we're going to do some more here. So you can see the beginnings of the legs of a stonefly. I'll put that down just a little bit. I don't want all that orange thread to show. The real insect doesn't really have that orange band in the middle. So I'm going to go to my dubbing, and just for this one little piece, I'm just going to choose some brown, or in this case, just a little bit of black to match my chenille. Don't need a lot. Stoneflies are scruffy, so we're not looking to lay that down in a pretty body like we would with a mayfly or caddis. Okay, now I'm going to jump that thread to the front. So that thread is now in front of that back bead. And I need to create a little bit of volume, a little bit of body size here. And those stoneflies, their thorax and abdomen are a little different shade. So I'm going to come in with a dubbing. I like to use squirrel blend dubbing. Use this stuff for years, and I just like try something else, and I'm like, nah, I'm just going to keep using this. So I'm just creating a little rough volume, covering up the wire in the middle there before I come back and actually do something. Now I'm going to add the wing case. So stoneflies have 2 wings. And when they're in their nymph form, those wing buds are very prominent. So I have used a Swiss straw for that, and there's a couple of reasons. So here's a Swiss straw as it comes off the card. There's the card. There's a clip of it. But this is all folded. If you haven't ever used that before, I don't know how they do it at the factory, but that's what it actually is. It's pretty wide. That's an inch or so wide. Well, I don't want it open. I want to keep it folded. So just to use, I'll come in with a second piece here. And I'm going to lay that down, capture it on top of that dubbing, all the way back to the rear bead. Now, to make a wing case out of that, I'm just going to fold it over, but I'm going to create a doubling of that. I'm just using my fingers here. If that doesn't work or it's hard, you can stick a dubbing needle in here, create exactly what you want. Let me move my hands here. Create exactly what you want, get it in the right place. But usually with some practice, and it doesn't have to be exact, I'm just going to double that over. And that's my rear wing case. Now, what matters about that and why I use Swiss straw is when Swiss straw gets wet, it tends to expand. So here where it's cinched down with the thread, it stays thin, but out at the back end, when it gets wet, this will actually expand, and you can see how that will behave to create a 3D wing case. And I'm going to do two of them. So just keep going here, move that down a little bit. And put a little bit of dubbing in between there just to cover that up some. Oops, that was the wrong color. I don't know if you guys know or appreciate, but the way Al does this and the way I'm tying is with the camera between my body and the vise, and that's hard. I do a magazine column and I do videos sometimes. Most of the videos you see, the camera is sitting on the back side of the vise. You're looking at it backwards as a tire. That's okay, but it's much more effective when the way we do this on these Zoom calls, you got the camera between you and the vise, so you see it just exactly the way you would tie it. Okay, I'm going to pull that wing case back a little bit. Use my thumb, create a crease there, like a second wing. Tie that down. The dubbing that I put in there tends to cause that Swiss straw to stick up some, again, giving you a 3D effect. I'm done with that. Clean off the butt end. Cinch that down a little bit just to keep it there. Now I'm going to add my front legs to this. So same material, the floss. Going to put it behind the thread, coming up behind the thread. Doubling over into my fingers. So I've got that floss captured in between. Now I can place this wherever I want. So I can go here, I can go here, I can go here, just with thread torque. So I'm going to go over to the back side and pretty much on the back side of the fly. Now, in order to cause these legs to go in two different directions, if I kept my thread exactly in that same spot, they both go together. I'm going to advance my thread forward just slightly, a couple of wraps in that gap. and that's going to cause that front leg to point forward. Now that's a lot of material there, so I'll get rid of some of that. Oops. I'll do the front leg. Same way, capture it behind the thread, double it over, capture the butt end. So the two pieces are in my left hand. And then just with torque, I make that rubber leg go, the floss, whoops, lost it, floss leg, place wherever I want it. In this case, I want it on the side. Now, because of the backside leg, I ended forward. My thread is already forward. So now to make the floss point in two different directions, I'm moving my thread backwards. Now you can see the beginnings of the X legs on that. Okay, that's a little too long to work with. I'm going to trim those off some here. I'll trim them a little closer in a minute. And then I can trim that back loop. So I've got that loop on the back there. If I just cut it in half, I get the beginnings of legs there. A tail, excuse me. That one didn't turn out very well. That one laid down too far, but I'll get that in a minute. Okay, now I'm just going to finish it with some, I want some dubbing to cover that orange thread. They have a orange marking on their head, but that's too much right there. I'm going to make the orange in the front. So I'm going to pull those rubber legs, the legs back. Sorry, I keep calling rubber legs, the floss legs. And a reason to keep these longer than normal, than you want them in the end, don't cut them yet, it's because it gives you something to hold on to. So to whip finish, a little dexterity, you can pull them back. I'm just going to build up a bulk of thread. This is actually what a nymph looks like. They have a very prominent orange mark on their head. So establish that. I can whip finish. So same way with a whip finish, takes a little dexterity. I'm going to go in and start the normal cross, but I've got to pull these legs back to get it placed there. There's one. So now what's left is to trim those legs. So the rear ones, I'm going to pull the tails back together at the same time to get them about the same distance, stretching them out a little bit. Give them a trim and you'll just get shorter tails that way. These rear ones right here, I want them about the length of the bend. Not real critical. Can't pull them hard because then when you cut them, they'll shrink back. So you just want a little tension on them. Get them where you want them. And there they'll be. And then these front ones, that one I want just a little shorter. And then the front two stoneflies certainly have legs on the front. They also have antenna, which can be imitated in other patterns by biots, but this is just a way to kind of imitate that and get some legs in it too. And then this fly will get chewed and eaten and bit hard. It's got some places in here that might be considered weak points. So yeah, I'm going to use a little cement right there in the middle. Come in on this head. Give it a little shot of glue. And then I take a wire brush. I don't want to pull out that dubbing too much. I just kind of want it to show in there a little bit. Come in after it's showing. Give it a little trim. Gives it some flash. Yeah, that's that. Am I still in focus? I'm checking here. Yeah, this tail, I didn't get that one. I got it pulled too far to the side, so I apologize for that. It should be sticking out over the bend of the hook there. But you can see for sure now the 3D effect of those wings.
Any questions for Joel? Good, Joel. We're running a little long, so let's pick it up and move on into the next one. And I
Yep.
will get you a recipe for that.
Okay, here's the dry fly version. So this is my version. If you're familiar with Bob Jacklin, this is my version of his fly. So it's not a new pattern, but it is a, excuse me, I need to do that. It is a little bit different materials. So I'm using same size hook, size 6, 4x long, same orange thread. The tail, the black elk, what that represents is an egg sac. The adult females, when they're laying their eggs, the eggs are a little black blob right at the end of their abdomen. So that's what that represents. And of course, the rest of it is palmered hackle, elk hair, and a black collar. So there's that. I'll get it started. Here we go. So same hook, except in a dry version. Call this Dine and Dash Salmon Fly. I'm going to use black dyed elk hair for the butt, bleach blonde elk hair for the wing, polypropylene yarn, orange color for the body, and orange thread. On this thread, I'm going to use a 3/0 size just because we're going to be cranking a little bit more. And then for the hackle, this I'm using a whiting, which is described as a grizzly natural brown dyed. So I've got all those picked out. 3/0 thread, big wide wraps to the end. Again, I'm going to put an orange tag on this. Coming in, taking that black hair, clip off a section of it. Don't need a lot. We've got a clump of that. Got a stacker here. Pull it out, clean it up some. I'm going to turn this around. Let me do that again. That's how it came out of the stacker. Different from normal. I'm going to turn it around with the butts to the rear. All this unevenness doesn't matter because we're going to cut it. But the smaller tips give me a little bit of taper to capture and tie this down. Using an Al Beatty trick many years ago, instead of going over the top and pulling it down, and putting a wrap around it first and then pulling it down. That gives it a place to go in against the shank of the hook and keep it on top. And then just some wide wraps here. Covering it up, getting all the way back to the bend. And I'm going to trim this for the egg sac butt. Pretty simple there. I've picked out a whiting hackle already. And actually tied in by the tip, which is a little different backwards. I got a section there that pulled out. Like that right there. Clean it up. Capture it. This will be palmered later. Set that aside. You know what palmering is? Palmering is a reference to Roman soldiers when they came back victorious and brought palm leaves with them. They wrapped palm leaves around them from head to waist, and they palmered those palm leaves, and that's where the term comes from. Okay, I'm going to, I got a piece of material here of the polypropylene yarn. Polypropylene has a specific gravity of less than 1. So this is a dry fly, so yeah, it floats. So I'm just going to rudely and quickly capture that. Not looking for neatness here. Got to get right back to the bin there so the polypropylene and the hackle can come forward. I'm going to go about to the 3/4 point. Now polypropylene will spread. You can see that flatness there. I'm sort of stroking it as I go and slightly overwrapping each wrap. So again, stonefly bodies are not particularly tapered. So I'm overlapping, coming forward to make a pretty smooth body there. Capture that, pull that down. I want a little bit of an angle there just to avoid a big bump in the ramp. Bring the palmer hackle forward. By tying it in with the tip, you make the hackle turn different directions. So generally it's facing rearward here. Keeps it out of the way. Just a standard palmering technique, nothing new or special there. I don't want that going anywhere, so I'm going to put that in. I'm going to tie in the elk hair wing here. Yeah, doesn't work very well if you got a ramp. I mean, you want a ramp. You want it smooth, slightly tapered, or else the elk hair in your thread just falls off. So I've got some elk hair that's been cleaned and bleached here. And the wings on this, you want pretty thick. So I'm going to come in and take a pretty big chunk of this. So I've got a pretty hefty chunk of elk there. Because time I clean it up, pull out the short ones, maybe comb it a little bit, back it. Oops. A few black hairs from the tail still in there, so anyway, I got that put in the stacker. There's one of those black ones. Get that going. All these short ones, they're not going to stay, so grab it towards the end of the butts. Pull out the short ones. Lay that on top, out to the end of the tail, measure it. Again, put a wrap over and come down with it. That'll tend to keep it right on top instead of rolling. I'm putting ever harder crank of wraps going backwards. This is where that 3/0 thread comes into play. I need a taper here to finish this out, so clean that up. Tie that down. Doesn't have to be real neat because we're going to cover it up anyway. I want this to spread before I get it all finished. I'm spreading that elk wing. If you see a dry, when the salmon flies are sitting, their wings will be over their two sets of wings, four wings will be over their back. But when they're flying, they're out to the side, and when they're on the water, they're out to the side. Well, of course, we're imitating them when they're landed and on the water. So those wings are intentionally spread out. Now I'm going to come back to the black. Whoops, hit the camera. Clip off another clump of black. Pretty good little clump because time I wing this, get rid of the short ones, we'll stack it. That stack there, pull it out. Now this is kind of the different part. I'm going to turn it around. So you got to kind of be a little dexterous with this because I actually want to have the tips forward, which is not normal when you're working with elk hair and wings. So now I've got the tips forward and a little bit of measuring the length there because these tips are going to fold backwards. So I'm going to make collar. I'm going to jam. It's not sitting on top. I'm going to jam that into the eye of the hook and into the thread. Need my thread a little further. There we go. Now, switch hands. Pull it around. So it's going to flare a little bit. But before I finish it, I want this rearward facing to be just a collar. So just come in here and intentionally shorten it. If you'll come in pretty deep, you can get just the black hairs. You might get a few lighter colored wing fibers. But I've just created a, oops, don't want to cut my thread there, huh? Create a little collar. Now standard bullet head. I'm going to push it back over the eye of the hook. Push it back. Capture it with my fingers. If I can get it. There we go. Got a few rogue ones there. Well, that wasn't very neat. Apologize for that. And again, the 3/0 thread. I'm pulling pretty hard and working backwards. And I'm going to whip finish that. Oops, I got a little extra right there. And then because we want this to sit down on the water with these wings spread out, actually going to come in and trim the bottom. Want it, that hackle fairly short. So that it's laying on its belly there and not on its side is how it will float. And yep, put a little cement on that. I like some cement back in here where all that got wrapped up. That whelk wing gets beat up, it'll come out. There you go.
Sure can. I love the way that head turned out. I have to admit, when you started into the final stages of this fly, I said, now how in the heck is he going to pull that off?
I didn't do a great job on the bullet head there, but it should be smaller than that. And those wraps should be behind the eye, another a half an eye width. It should be a little black showing there. So
Sure.
yeah.
Any questions for Joel? Kathy had mentioned, she says, I really love the 2121 chenille wrap. And I have to admit, I've not seen that before either. And I'm going to put that to good use. That was really cool.
Well, all right. Maybe I showed somebody something new. So you can put that in your Fly Tying magazine tips.
There you go. And Sherry said that the fly should work on the shoots in Oregon very well. And we have a couple of guys. Rick said nice patterns. And Ralph Rhodes wants to know exactly what I was going to ask about. What type of glue? And Mitch wants to know what type of glue as well.
Well, everybody's used something different, all different brands. I'm using the Loon water-based head cement.
Okay, that was Loon then. Okay, got it.
Yeah, that's my head cement. For a number of reasons, it flows well. It doesn't glob up this dispenser that comes with it. They finally got smart and gave us a real small dispenser that those little bottles we used to fill just with stick the pin in the end. This does not. It has a little black cap that you put on it, so with that, it doesn't dry out. So that's my go-to cement right now.
Joel, thank you. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you sharing these with us. And we're getting ready now to move into the weekly tip. And the weekly tip is covering up, and quite frankly, this is covering up for what we're going to do next week, because Gretchen and I will be the presenters next week. And well, we're just going to let you kind of wonder about what we're going to present. But tonight, we're going to paint with powder. That's what we're going to do. And what I have right here is a 1/32 bullet head on a pin. And of course, I've already glued that. So let me lay that aside for a second. Go over to the material section. And what I've got here is bullet weights in 1/32 ounce. And I get those at I got those at Cabela's about 5 years ago. Now let me take a real short pause here, and I need to put something in the chat for you all, because Cabela's don't have them anymore. And I went on Amazon, and I've got some links for you. I may as well put all those links into the chat right now. Usually Gretchen does that for me, but she had to leave a few minutes ago. So let me move over there into the chat. Okay, all the links are there now. Now we're back, and you can see that I've got some other materials there, but for right now, we're just taking a look at the bullet weight and a pin. And we're going to come back over here to the hook. And I've already laid that aside. And all you do with this 1/32 lead slip sinker, and that's all that is a slip sinker. The guys that fish worms on spin fishing know these very well, and they come in multiple sizes. The smallest you can get is 1/32, that size there, and then 2/32, 3/32, an eighth, and they go on up from there. I must admit, though, I've used them up to an eighth myself, and I'm a pretty fair caster, and I can cast an eighth of an ounce with a fly rod, okay. But I'll tell you what, it's a heck of a lot easier with one of these, or maybe a 2/32 or a 3/32, but you don't want to get too much more than that. Anyway, what we do to prepare this for the next step is to turn that down just a little bit. I would typically be holding that. And I'm going to reach back over to the materials area. And this is also in the chat area, the link for that. But this is called Mercury Adhesive Thin. And I'm just going to bring that over here to the vise. Give you a close-up there of that. And the link that I put over there off of Amazon, I bought this one for, I think it was $15. Then I decided I wanted to have a medium instead of just a thin one. So I got another one for 15 bucks. And then I got one that was thick. I did 3 at a time. And then today, when I was looking for these links for you guys, I found one where you could buy all 3 plus a speed fixer for 30 bucks. So I could have saved myself about 10 bucks if I would have done what I'm sharing with you tonight. But anyway, I'm not going to do this other than to show you what we do. Because you know how I don't like glue around my cameras, but that would, you can see the glue oozing out, and it would drop down into that and slide down the needle, and it would lock this in place after it dries, so that, well, I'll set this one aside. And I'm going to bring the one that I've finished already. This has already been glued. I did it this afternoon, and I can hit it pretty hard, and it's not going anywhere. Now, how do you paint with this? Well, for some of you, if you've ever done any bass lures or even a lot of fly fishing lures, we're going to introduce you to another product. That's also over in the chat, and it's called ProTech powder paint. And I'll just move that over here, and we'll take a look at it here at the vise. And there it is right there. And this is full of black powder, and whatever you do, don't spill it. Oh, God, it makes a mess. It makes a terrible mess. Let's get that turned around. And I'm going to just set that down now and very gently take the lid off. Set it down so I can get to it very easily, because here's what comes next. You all have seen these before. This is my flamer. It's not a cigarette lighter. It's for lighting a grill or something like that. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I think I'll go to this camera. You can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to warm this up a bit. You want to get it nice and warm, and now it's starting to flame a little bit. Oh, okay, that's good. And then I'm going to pick up my powder and stick that in there. Then I'm going to warm it up a little bit more, move it around, let it settle in. And let me bring it back here to a painted head. Now, I did a bad job of that, trying to keep it in front of the camera, but I can paint those things pretty darn nice. You can also take a hammer. You notice this is kind of round, but you can take a hammer, or I just use a tack hammer is what I use, against the tabletop, and tap this a couple of times to flatten it out before you paint it. Then you can paint it and put eyes on it. But we're not going to get into all of that right now, because that would take all the fun away from what we're going to do next week. But first, before I do anything, oh gosh, I've already bumped it once. You see all that powder? Can you imagine that all over my light tying area and camera? Oh my God. Oh boy, get this out of here.
Well, you just did is similar to powder coating.
That's exactly what it is. It's powder coating, but I do it on fishing lures, and it's a lot easier to do when you don't have to try to stay in front of a camera, and you can get things warmed up just right. Do a nice, it's a quick, fast paint job. Just does a beautiful job.
It is. It's gorgeous. Thank you.
Yeah, it's nice and shiny, and you can have your flies look really, really nice. Tonight, in this section, we want to move into the sharing, where we hear from people in the audience. And I'm going to remove the spotlight on this. Before we go into the full sharing, I want to share something that I got in my email earlier this week. I'll tell you what, I just, there's a fellow that's on here all the time. His name is David Buckner. I swear, this guy must have terrible dreams at night or something, because this is a picture of a peppermint popper that he sent me earlier this week. I said, oh, wow, that is amazing. Now, you ain't going to believe what comes next. Rudolph. This is a Rudolph tied by David Buckner. On the left is the version without the nose lit up. He's even got batteries in this darn thing to light up the nose on Rudolph. So anyway, I'm stunned with some of the stuff that I get from Dave, and I am going to spotlight him right now so that he can share one other thing that he sent me an email about just a few minutes before we went on tonight. And David, if you want to talk to us about that piece of foam that you told me about.
Yeah, I emailed Al earlier today, and I started thinking about, I was beating up some hooks, and I found these foam discs from Walmart. They're like a 3-inch wide diameter and 3/4 inch thick, and just park my beaded hooks on there. But I also want y'all and Al and Gretchen in particular to maybe over the next few weeks to talk about tips and tricks around material prep and just in staging material, because I know a lot of y'all are production tires, and you've probably got some pretty efficient ways of staging materials, get them ready to produce flies. But those again, they're on Walmart.com. 3-inch diameter, 3/4 inch thick disc, foam disc, styrofoam disc. Real handy.
So is there anybody else out there that wants to share? And what I would like to do starting from now until we get through New Year's, if you have any nightmares or want to share a Christmas fly with us, we'd sure love to have you do it. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be this exotic. It doesn't even have to have a nose that lights up. Whatever you would like to share, but we'll do that in the sharing section. So if anybody's got a Christmas fly they want to share or one they want to share now, please speak up. Well, next week when Gretchen and I share with you next week, we'll be well, let's see. Let me spotlight that. Let's go back to this. We'll be adding this to a fly, and it's going to produce something that's really kind of nice. We're going to use some feathers. I will give you a little bit of a tease. We all have saddles that we've bought or inherited or whatever, and there's some nice long feathers in there, but after those feathers go away, there's stuff left. Now there's some long feathers, but they're all webby, and the ones that are pretty good dry fly stuff, they're not even. They're more like a Christmas tree. Got a lot of web in the base ends. Well, we're gonna show you some ways to really put these to good use and come up with some really good looking flies, along with some spin fishing bullet heads, whatever you want to call them. And that's it for tonight, folks. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next week. Gretchen and I will have something real special for you.